Hi and welcome to this look at the April weather outlook. As there's quite a lot of new people watching these forecasts, I think it's just worth pointing out at the outset that in the UK, when we're looking more than about 5, perhaps 7 days ahead, confidence in a given outcome begins to fall and the focus really is less on the specific details and it's more on the likely trends, the sort of broad brush trends which are developing and which the computer models are suggesting will be the direction of travel. So do remember that when I go through the longer term picture. Okay, having got that out of the way, I'm going to start by taking a look at the short term, and this is at 15 GMT on Friday the 2nd of April. It's a picture across Europe and the North Atlantic, and it's showing air mass temperatures and surface pressure. And what we can see immediately is this big area of high pressure centred to the west of the UK, and the greens and light blues over the UK are indicating fairly, not particularly cold upper level air. Temperatures at the outset are quite close to the average. Now, if we see what happens as we go through the Easter weekend, this is a really dramatic change. And by 0 GMT on Monday, the 5th of April, what we can see is this bitterly cold Arctic air has pushed southwards across the United Kingdom. And that really will bring back a very wintry flavour to the weather, with sleet or snow showers possible in virtually anywhere on Bank Holiday Monday. Now, if we continue this to see what happens, it's quite an interesting evolution. It remains very cold through Tuesday. As we head through the middle of the week, you can see the country is still under these blues indicating cold upper level air. But up to the northwest, we've got this area of low pressure. And that's tracking eastwards, and associated with it there is less cold air, which is embedded into the system. Now we are really looking at, when going this far ahead, we don't really, as I said, want to be focusing on the details, but there is quite a lot of support for this scenario. So if we just run it through to its end and see what happens, that low pressure tracks eastwards into Scandinavia, and by Friday the 9th of April, what we can see again is this really cold plunge of air from the Arctic has swept down across the UK again. So if this is correct, we're getting a double whammy of winter through the first third of April. That area of low pressure with the less cold air wrapped up in it will bring the possibility of more longer periods of rain, sleet or snow. But I would have thought that the snow is most likely to be over high ground in the northern half of the UK. But if it does track as shown on that sequence, once it pulls away eastwards, we'll be back into that really cold air mass once again, and the risk of wintry showers will be pushing southwards across the UK. So just to see whether some of the other computer models are supporting that evolution through towards the end of the first week of April. Here we go, and this is for the 9th of April. What we can see is it's from the ECM model run, and again you've got the area of low pressure which has pushed away eastwards after tracking across the northern half of the United Kingdom. So again, it's pulling back in a second cold northerly plunge. Likewise with the Canadian model, the GEM, it's a very similar story here. The low pressure area is a little bit further south, but the big picture's the same, with high pressure out in the Atlantic, the second cold northerly plunge moving down across the United Kingdom. So pretty good support for that scenario. If we look at the European Ensemble 10-day forecast, again, it's offering a similar scenario, or most of the runs in the Ensemble would appear to be offering a similar scenario, because if you remember, this is built up from many, many iterations. I think it's 50 with the European model. 50 iterations of it are run with the starting conditions tweaked a little bit to help account for the uncertainty. And what we can see is this big plunge in upper air temperatures here, which has been well forecasted through the Easter weekend. And then they do tend to recover slightly before perhaps dipping away again towards the end there. And they're recovering around the 8th of April, and that's probably when we've got that less cold sector, that warm sector associated with the area of low pressure tracking across the UK. This one's for London, and this is for Inverness. It's a pretty similar pattern, although there is a greater likelihood of, because we're further north here, there is a possibility if that low pressure moves southwards that Inverness will stay in the colder air for longer, but for the moment, it does look like it's a similar basic pattern across the United Kingdom. So that takes us through the first 10 days of April. If we take a look at the GEFS plots, which go out 16 days, this one's looking at the London area. And what we can see is I've annotated it just to show where it looks like we're going to be seeing this area of low pressure pushing eastwards, and to see whether there's support for it in this model, the GEFS. So this is the American ensemble, the last one was the European one. And you can see, again, you get this huge plunge in upper air mass temperatures. And then just around here, about the 8th of April, we see there is a recovery there for a time. And then a number of runs take it colder again, but things do become more uncertain. So it would be, again, suggesting here that that area of low pressure pulls away eastwards, colder air sinks southwards as it moves away. So there does seem to be quite a lot of support for that scenario in the ensemble. As we head through towards the middle of April, there is a trend upwards there in air mass temperatures. So I've annotated it as being milder. There's quite a big spread showing there, but most of the model runs are showing a recovery in temperatures, and many of them are becoming milder than 30-year average. So we could be seeing a significant transition towards the middle of April, away from that colder scenario. If we just quickly look at the precipitation along the bottom, it's dry to begin with, it's quiet, and then we see some spikes appearing as the risk of showers increases, and the cold air pushes down from the north. There will be some precipitation associated with that transition, but it's not a particularly wet picture by any means, and that continues to be the case right through the run. So there is some rain or snow showing up there, but it's not, as I say, not particularly wet. Looking at Manchester, it's a very, very similar picture. There are probably more precipitation spikes, but likewise, it's not overly wet. And Glasgow, here, it does look like there's a greater risk of rain or snow, or at least more of it. You can see there's more precipitation spikes appearing there in the longer term. The upper air temperature profiles are a little bit different. Towards the middle of the month, we don't see the warm up isn't as marked as it was in the south. That would be tending to suggest the likelihood of northern parts of the United Kingdom perhaps staying in more of a northwesterly flow at times, colder air coming in from west or northwest across the north of the country, with an increase in the likelihood of a west or southwesterly flow further south. So there are signs of a change there as we head into the middle of the month. And if we just take a look at the pressure data table, I've picked York again because it's a relatively central location. What we can see is the oranges. So we're seeing a daily summary, and the oranges show really high pressure. Yellow is between about 1,011 millibars and 1,025, so relatively high. Generally above the average. So we can see the yellows and oranges dominating there in the short term. There are more greens appearing, and the oranges fade away after the first couple of days. That's as that northerly plunge develops and pressure does drop a little bit. Then as we head further ahead, the oranges begin to increase again, the greens decrease, so there's an upward trend in pressure showing there. From about the 9th of April through to about the 14th. But then at the very end, what we can see is it's dipping away again with more greens. There's even a purple in the top right, which is indicating the lowest pressure category which these charts display. But as I say, there's only 3% chance of that happening. That essentially equates to one run in the ensemble showing it. But nonetheless, there is a downwards trend in pressure towards the middle of the month. So that's really covering the first half of April. What about the second half? Obviously, forecast confidence decreases even further as we look at through the second half of the month, going from about 15 to 30 days here. So it really is important to remember this is just possible trends which are being shown. I've covered up the first half of this plot because it's relating to the first half of April, which I've discussed already. The area to focus on is the bit over there, which hasn't been covered, and this is the 2 metre temperature trend plot for London. What we can see is a thick black line which goes right through it is the 30-year average, and the signal on this is for mean temperatures in the ensemble, so that's averaging out the temperatures from all of the 30 runs which are in the American ensemble, the GEFS, averaging them all out and comparing the minimum and maximum values for all of those runs to the 30-year mean, 30-year average. And what we can see is that generally there's more red which is the mean, appearing above the thick black line than there is below it. So this is suggesting the likelihood, it's favouring slightly above average 2 metre temperatures, those ones we experienced down at the surface, for much of the second half of April. So essentially after that very cold first week and cold of an average second week, perhaps temperatures are going to be back to or slightly above the average in the south. In terms of the pressure pattern, it's also suggesting a tendency for, well, we can see there's a dip in pressure around the middle part of the month. Then the red line showing the mean actually picks up a little. It climbs above the average by several millibars. It then declines weekly. It's a shallow decline through the rest of the period. So taking that as it appears, it suggests slightly above average pressure, surface pressure through the second half of April, and perhaps a correspondingly elevated chance of drier periods relative to the norm. Take a look at Inverness. So I picked this to go right up or near to the top of the United Kingdom. I know you can go further, of course. What this shows, again, looking at the 2 metre temperatures, is there is a signal here for 2 metre temperatures to possibly remain close to or even a little bit below the 30-year average during the second half of April. So again, that's tying in with the idea of the northern half of the United Kingdom possibly being under more of a west or a northwesterly flow at times. Maybe getting some colder, cooler air still pushing into the northern half of the UK more so than in the south. In terms of the pressure trends for Inverness, it's a similar story actually to the London chart. If anything, pressure's a little bit lower, so taking those two charts into account would suggest that high pressure is more likely to be centred to the south of the UK than the north. So after that early cold weather during the first half of April, where what we've got is high pressure centred up to the northwest, the signal here is for that high pressure to actually become centred more to the south of the UK and revert to a more normal pattern across the North Atlantic, with areas of low pressure tracking to northwest of the United Kingdom. Quick look at the air mass temperatures for week 2 on the GEFS 35-day run. So this actually begins on Thursday, the 8th of April. I wanted to show it because it highlights the blues across the United Kingdom there are highlighting below average air mass temperatures. So the cold of an average period continues through the second week of the month, as I've discussed. Now, the following week, week 3, which begins Thursday the 15th of April, by then what we can see is air mass temperatures across the southern half of the UK are shown by the pink and red shading, which is indicating that they've returned to average or above the 30-year average. And in the north, they're still closer to or slightly below that long-term average. So again, that pattern is fitting in with what I'm describing about the likelihood of the southern half of the UK seeing higher temperatures relative to the average than the north. Final week of the month, final full week of the month starting on the 22nd, and what we see by then is that the anomalies have really faded a lot by this stage, as you would generally expect that to be the case when you're running the model many times to generate the mean. You'd expect the variance to increase and the runs to start to cancel each other out more the further ahead you go. And that's probably what we're seeing here. So the mean becomes less useful as a tool for forecasting. But nonetheless, I think it has some value. And what it's showing here is possibility of close to or slightly below average air mass temperatures in the northeast of the United Kingdom. As you come down to the southwest, the pinks and reds appear in suggesting average or above. So don't want to interpret too much into the pressure patterns which this may be suggesting, but perhaps high pressure being centred to the west or southwest of UK with somewhat cooler air coming over the top of it and across Scotland and down the northeast of and down the eastern side of Britain. But that's really very, very, very speculative. So to summarise April, it's a dry and settled start with chilly nights and pleasant days. As we head through the Easter period, it turns much colder from the north, and by Bank Holiday Monday, there's a risk of sleet or snow showers in all parts of the country. Week 2 begins cold with wintry showers, and there is a possibility of a longer period of rain, sleet or snow moving down across the country. Snow's most likely over high ground in the north. As that clears eastwards, cold air pushes southwards down across the United Kingdom once again, and the risk of wintry showers returns for a time. Towards the end of the second week, temperatures probably begin to recover, and it is a more mixed picture through the second half of April. In the south, temperatures on the whole are more likely to be above the average, and in the north, close to or slightly below it. There's the chance of showers or longer periods of rain in all regions, but a slightly increased chance of dry spells relative to the norm. So that summarises it. It's a very mixed month. We've got this wintry period during the first week or two. To an extent, that may be offset by more mixed conditions through the second half of April, but remember that at that range, even trends are subject to large changes as the time gets nearer. So hopefully you enjoyed this forecast and found it useful. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks very much for watching now. Bye.